Hello everyone, welcome to Barca News. It is January 16th, 2025, and Victor Font has held his own press conference in response to Joan Laporta's press conference where he discussed the Elmo registration, the Nike deal, amongst other things. And I decided to make a video because I think Victor Font does raise some important questions that maybe we should be thinking about. We have a lot to discuss, so let's begin. Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Mo and today we're going to be discussing Victor Font's press conference in response to Joan Laporta's because I think he brought up some pretty important questions that we should at least be thinking about. I'm not telling you here to all of a sudden side with Victor Font or believe everything he says, but I think he he raised some points that we should at least be thinking about, because after all, we should always be questioning what our leaders do, because as we saw under Bartomeu, no one dared to question what he was doing. And while we know how that story ended, so in order to prevent the club from going down the same road, we should always question what our leaders do, whether it's Laporta, Victor Font, or whether Lionel Messi himself runs as president. We should always question what's going on and not just take things at face value. So let's see what Victor Font discussed, starting with, of course, Dani Olmo. That was, of course, it was going to be one of the biggest points raised. And this is what Font had to say. My question is the reason for spending 60 million euros and not being able to register Dani Olmo. There was no work plan. If Christensen is not injured, what would have happened? Imprudence endangers what we colleagues love most. We need a management as God commands. So this is the same point I've made several times in the video, so I'm not going to go into too much. My point has always been, if you're going to spend 60 million euros on someone like Dani Olmo, you have to have a plan in place to register him, especially if you knew you couldn't register him. And it doesn't seem like there was any plan in place, because the only way Olmo was registered was, of course, through the injury of Christensen, which had he not gotten injured, what would have happened? And then there's also the lack of plan afterwards, because Laporta had 4 months to register Olmo and instead waited 4 days before the deadline, which goes to show that Laporta is at this point improvising. And while you're running a multinational like Barcelona, one of the biggest and richest clubs in the world, you cannot just improvise. You have to have a plan in place with even backup plans in case that initial plan fails. Now, the next point that Victor Font discussed was the signing of BTO Ro, when he said the following: we had Margiu, there was no fair play, and we signed BTO Ro. If we saw that he was the new Ronaldinho, we understand him and prioritize talent, but it is evident that he does not have the characteristics to play in Barca. Deco had offered him to the club when he was his representative. Johan Cruyff and Matteo Alemany said there was no fair play and it was not a priority. The first thing Deco did was sign BTO Ro as soon as he arrived. Now, I'm glad Victor Font brought this up, because I actually made this point during the video I made about Joan Laporta's press conference, because I said no one is talking about this, but BTO Ro was signed also with no plan to register him, just like Dani Olmo, because how did we register BTO Ro? We did it through the injury of Gabi. Now, we got lucky, I guess, that BTO Ro did not work out, because had he worked out, how would we have registered him? Gabi is back. We had no financial fair play in the summer. So if had BTO Ro worked out, we would now be talking about BTO Ro's registration, not just Dani Olmo. And then Victor Font making a point which I did not know, and this is very concerning, because Victor Font has revealed that Deco tried to bring BTO Ro to the club back when Deco was still an Asian, and Matteo Alemany and Johan Cruyff said, no thank you, we can't afford him, there's no financial fair play. And then Deco comes into the club, and what he does, he signs him, which is, it's funny because it's the same point that I've made before, right? About Olmo. I said, if you can't afford something, don't sign him. And Matteo Alemany and Johan Cruyff believed that too, because they knew they couldn't afford BTO Ro since there was no financial fair play. So they said, no, thank you. But then they leave. And what happens? We sign BTO Ro, who we couldn't afford because we couldn't register. And then we signed Dani Olmo, who also we couldn't afford because we couldn't register. And now you're starting to see a pattern of imprudence. As Victor Font said, imprudence only hurts the club. Now, Victor Font spoke about Bartomeu, a comparison between Bartomeu and Joan Laporta, and this is what he had to say. The situation is worse than it was with Bartomeu. The debts are higher, the income is the same, and we spend almost the same. I'm convinced that in a short time there will be problems. Love and Barca is doing things right without dark operations or commissions. Now here I don't agree with Victor Font. I don't think the situation is worse than what Bartomeu did. I think what Bartomeu did is an absolute travesty. He completely destroyed the club. So I'm not gonna compare what Joan Laporta is doing to what Bartomeu did, or even say that it's worse. I think that's a total exaggeration. But I do agree with the second part of that statement, which is that Victor Font says that, Love and Barca is doing things right without dark operations or commissions. Now, of course, commissions, he's referring to that 50 million euro commission to Darren Dane, which I know a lot of people have tried to justify it as, oh, well, thanks to him, we were able to generate 300 million euros more through the Nike deal. So what's 50? What's 50? 50 is a lot of money that we don't have and we desperately need. So that's not really an excuse. And then I think another dark operation, which I've never talked about, is Barca Vision. Because Barca Vision was created, the company was created in order to develop the media part of Barcelona, right? Virtual, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, develop all the media part of Barcelona. But up to this point, it still seems like that company is not really doing much. It's not generating revenue, it's not developing many of the technologies they're supposed to be developing. So at some point, you start thinking like, is this company even real? Or is it just a fictitious shell company that was created in order to sell shares of it to generate income, which becomes questionable. And then when I started thinking about that, it made me think, what if the reason Libero did not stop paying was because they realized it was a terrible investment? Because this is something that not a lot of people talk about, but I did cover it in another video. After the investment into Libero, that caused, into Barca Vision, that caused a lot of conflict within Libero, with many board members, including the president of their board, resigning because they were against Libero investing in Barca Vision, and then Libero stopped making payments. So that's something you have to at least think about. What if Libero knew that Barca Vision was just nothing, and that's why they stopped paying, and that's why so many of their board members resign? And then another thing that, once I went down that rabbit hole, that made me question this operation altogether is the fact that after Libero stopped making payments, the board, Barcelona, Joan Laporta, they sold portion of Barca Vision that was owned by Libero to Aramark. Now, where's the problem in this? The problem in this is that Aramark is a catering company. So you have to think, what is the point of partnering with a catering company? And the reason I ask this question is Barcelona is obviously a football club. Their expertise is in football. Developing a media arm of the club is not something the club knows how to do because it's not a media company. So when you start a new department within your business, a department that you know nothing about, you usually want to partner with people who do. For example, if Apple were to decide to build a car tomorrow, they're going to probably partner up with a car automaker, because Apple doesn't know anything about making cars. They know how to make cell phones, right? Formula One, Red Bull, they know how to make energy drinks, but they partner with Honda because Honda's an automaker. They need an engine. They don't know how to make engines, so they partner with someone who do. So you would think that if Barcelona wanted to really develop Barca Vision, they would partner up with media companies. Now, they did partner up with Orpheus Media, which is becoming a mess of its own. But then they also partner up with Aramark, a catering company who also knows nothing about developing media business. And that brings me to the point of Victor Font. Dark operations. That's a problem. But there could be a perfect plan in place that makes sense on why Barcelona would partner up with Aramark or what's going on with Barca Vision that we don't know about. But it's definitely something to think about and something you should question. Now, Victor Font's next point was about the importance of modernizing and professionalizing the club. And this is what he had to say. Professionalization and modernization should not be one against the other. Barcelona talent must arrive from all over the world and from all areas. For example, if we created a professional environment for Guardiola, he would surely be willing to return, just like Messi. Now, I don't know if Guardiola would want to come back or Messi. I honestly doubt it, but Victor Font does make a very important point, and it's that we need to modernize the club. The club cannot be ran the way it's being ran, or it's been ran for many years. It needs to be run like a professional corporation with qualified people in key positions that know how to run an institution as big as Barcelona. And that's been a failure for Joan Laporta because he's had over 20 vacancies in his board, people who have resigned, and he has refused to fill them, including the CEO position that's been vacant for 2 years. And if you want to run a club efficiently, if you want to run a club the right way, you need qualified people in those positions to help you run it the right way, versus things that Joan Laporta is doing that are very questionable. For example, having his former brother-in-law work at the club, which nobody knows what he does, but he's just there, right? So another important point that we should also be questioning about the current Barcelona board. Now, Victor Font brought up another good point about Barcelona's enemies when he said the following: I have never voted for Tebas and Luzán. Joan Laporta has approved and voted for this type of fair play. If we believe that laws are not appropriate, let's work to change them. And this is a very important point because during Joan Laporta's press conference, he kept talking about Barcelona's enemies, wanting to destroy the club. You know, people like Tebas, which is the president of La Liga, people like Rafael Luzán, which is the president of the Royal Spanish Football Federation. But yet, Joan Laporta voted for Tebas this last election. Joan Laporta voted for Rafael Luzán. Joan Laporta also voted for Tebas' increased salary. And Joan Laporta voted for these financial fair play rules. So if we really have this huge concern with Barcelona's enemies, why are we voting for them? Another question that we should be asking ourselves. And finally, Victor Font, of course, brought up the whole transparency of the VIP seats deal, because until today, Barcelona have yet to tell us who are the two investors who bought the seats. We don't know who they are. So Victor Font bringing this point up, like, why are they hiding this? Which I also think it's a valid question. Anyways, that is all I had to cover about Victor Font's press conference. Again, I think he brought up some important points, important questions. And this video is not to bash Joan Laporta and get everybody mad at me. Mo, you're a Madridista. You're a Laporta hater. I think these are questions that we should all be asking, regardless of who's president, whether it's Bartomeu, Laporta, Victor Font, or Gerard Piqué, if he ever decides to become president. Whoever, whenever we have a president, everything they do, we should question. Why? Why are you doing this? How is this beneficial to Barcelona? We always should be making these questions, not because we have something against whoever's running the club, but because that's how you hold those who run the club accountable. Anyways, that is all I had to say. I will be posting 2 videos later tonight, so make sure to check them out. There's lots of news coming out of Barcelona. I will see you in those videos. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. And as always, peace, Barca.